March studying history and economic history. I was elected to become the faculty representative on the second week of my arrival at the University of Zimbabwe by the entire class of the first years. And that was the beginning of my journey into fighting injustice in this country. And it was also during that first year at the University of Zimbabwe where, against all odds, I was able to defy the theorem that was running high at the University of Zimbabwe that first years cannot become student representative council leaders. I contested for the elections in 1996, the year I arrived at the University of Zimbabwe. And I wanted to become the Secretary for Information and Publicity and the spokesperson of the University of Zimbabwe Student Representative Council in my first year. So I on the basis that my message to the students was resonating with the causes of the student population. So after having been elected into student leadership, activism started extremely powerful, but not forgetting that when you arrive at the University of Zimbabwe at that time, I don't know whether it is still the culture that is happening up to the present day. There is a week called the Orientation Week, where students will be oriented on what the University of Zimbabwe is. So the Student Representative Council, that is the leadership of the Students' Union, will be also holding an orientation week for students to orient them in the politics of the University of Zimbabwe and the politics of student activism, what is expected of students. It also played quite a major role. But I was impressed that Hon Job was one of those people who had been chosen outside the SRC to become one of the persons who was going to orient incoming students into student politics. He was a second year law student then. I was extremely impressed by the way how he was able to narrate what is expected of students in the struggle on several fronts in our country. So it really went a long way in convincing me that I have got a role also to play. That's why I had to join student politics at that time during my first year.
How do you find yourself in the MDC on its formation in 1999?
What happened is that during the period of our student activism, we became extremely popular in this country on the basis of many issues that we tackled. One of the major demonstrations that we demonstrated for was on the discrimination against Strife Masiwa to be granted a license for him to operate his Econet in Zimbabwe. It was then given to one Tutsi guy who came from Eastern DRC to come and open the first telecommunications wireless telephone services in Zimbabwe. So our argument was that how would the government prefer to give the operating license to a foreigner, while they are ignoring their own child in the country? So we set as the executive of the Student Representative Council for us to be able to look on the ways how we were going to intervene and say, why are you discriminating against Strife Masiwa to be given a license? So that demonstration became one of the most famous demonstrations that our SRC, which was being led by Hon Job as our president and myself as the spokesperson, raised at the University of Zimbabwe. The demonstration shuttered down the Harare at that time. We came in our thousands to come and protest against the discrimination that was being done against Strife Masiwa at the same time. Also, what agitated the students was an alleged statement which was being attributed to the then Minister of Information and Telecommunications, who was Joyce Mujuru, that she is labeled Joshua Ngomo, the then Vice President, to be a senile person who cannot make proper judgments on the basis of his senility. In that, Joshua Ngomo came out and said, why are we not able to promote our own children for them to get licenses to operate in this country rather than giving a foreigner? So that statement, which was said to have been uttered by Madam Joyce Mujuru, irritated and angered University of students too much. So it did not give us, difficulties for us to be able to mobilize the students for them to understand that the discrimination against Econet was based on corruption and was based on an injustice. We also embarked on quite a number of many demonstrations. One of them, which was inspired by the demonstration that happened in Indonesia at that material time. Indonesia was under the governance of a dictator called Suharto. The students in Indonesia rose against the dictatorship of Suharto and overthrew him from power in 1997.
You wanted to overthrow Mugabe?
That's when we then launched a demonstration called Operation One Time. We were inspired for us to also do exactly what the Indonesian students have done to Suharto against Robert Mugabe, because at that material time, a lot of corruption was taking place. That is when the issues of the War Veterans Fund scandals were on the national agenda and national crisis. As you know, the collapse of the Zimbabwean dollar after the Black Thursday, Zimbabwe's involvement in the war in the DRC, which massively affected the economy in Zimbabwe. You know, the lack of support for student grants and for them to learn properly at the University of Zimbabwe and so forth. So there were a plethora of many issues which were confronting the nation, which we told ourselves that we must deal with them as student leadership. So when we launched the demonstration called Operation One Time, its intention, specifically speaking, was that if the students in Indonesia have done it, why can't we also did it? If they did it, we can also did it. So we mobilized the students at the University of Zimbabwe. At the Harare Polytechnic, they were also student leaders. I still remember the SRC president at the Harare Polytechnic was Charlton Wende. We went there and convinced this SRC for him to join us in the demonstration. We also went to Belvedere Teachers College. We convinced them that there was need for us to do what the students in Indonesia have done. We went to Secret Teachers College, where we addressed them as well. And there was now a general consensus among the students in Harare that we must gather at the African Unity Square. For almost 2 weeks, we gathered at the African Unity Square every morning. People were not waking up from their dormitory rooms to go to lecture rooms. They were waking up every day to march to Africa Unity Square. And some of us slept there at the Africa Unity Square at the Parliament building to demand that Mugabe must go as he has failed the nation. That is where I in full reflection, respect Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe did not come and shoot us. at Africa in this way. But there were thousands and thousands of us, all the students in Harare, who gathered there for almost a week, sleeping at Africa in this way. No single student disappeared. But then there was an overzealous police officer who was called Gunda, who came and shot more Memories Chawira at the University of Zimbabwe. An incident that later provoked us to put us into full determination that we must deal with this regime. Without dealing with it, we will be in trouble. Then, after spending a week there at Africa in this way, we later decided to address students on the entrance door of Parliament, where myself, Daniel Molokele, who was called Fortune Mugun then, Lenmo Jongwe, and other student leaders stood to address the students that the day for us to go and march to Monmutapa building to go and retrieve Robert Mugabe from Monmutapa building has arrived. So we marched in our thousands from Parliament building in Nelson Mandela. Then we entered into 2nd Street, and we turned to go to Monmutapa offices. We gathered at the front of that building on the space between the High Court and Monmutapa in our thousands, trying to go and enter into Monmutapa building to go and retrieve Robert Mugabe. What he simply did was for him to dispatch the riot police to come and beat up the students away from Monmutapa building. No single student was shot right on the front of Monmutapa building, when all of us were agitating that we want to get inside and retrieve him and arrest him and overthrow him from power. We were not shot, but he only sent the police, came through tear gas and dispersed all of us scattered into different directions. Then after that, we had that same night, in that same day, Chombo came out of Ignatius Chombo, when he was then the Minister of Higher Education, came out on news pronouncing that the University of Zimbabwe and the Harare Polytechnic have been closed indefinitely. So Harare Polytechnic and Harare and the University of Zimbabwe were closed for a year. And the Vice Chancellor from the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Graham Hill, and the Principal of Harare Polytechnic to make announcement that students must come and quickly collect their goods and leave to go to their various rural homes. So this is the way how Mugabe demobilized us, by simply shutting down the University of Zimbabwe for a year and make sure that we will not be able to meet and organize ourselves. He did not shoot and kill us, which is completely different from the political situation of today, whereby anybody who is even remotely suspected and wrongly so and falsely so will be abducted at night, disappear, being thrown into prison for no apparent reason, but just a suspicion that Dara is organizing some action here. You get abducted, you get beaten up, you get thrown into prison. Just recently, you have seen that out of malicious allegations and so forth, Jacob Mugabe was just picked from his home on the assumption that he was preparing and organizing some demonstration pre-SADC summit in this country. Falsely accused him, and then gave him a false charge that he was together with those comrades who are currently